And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. I'm assuming you feel a lot better this week than you did this time last Sunday.
Oh, it feels so great to expose the University of Southern California, Blake. I will say, we were talking about this pre-show. This is a really weird week for me. A really weird recap episode because all of my analysis on the big games was very accurate. It was very spot on. But then if we pull up my game picks, I had one of the worst weeks ever.
Yes,
God.
Your boy did go 6-2. And I will just be real. I don't know how off my Oregon take was because Washington still got 200-plus yards run on him. I just didn't think that Dan Lanning would be such a buffoon to where he just gave the game up, man. But you know what I was right on, and I tried to calm you down. You thought I was trolling. How about them Notre Dame Fighting Irish? I told you USC was dookie trash.
This is an even weirder show because for those that weren't tuned in on Wednesday when you gave all of those takes, for anyone who wasn't here, it's going to be really strange knowing all the negative things you've said about Notre Dame. And we're going to come on here and say maybe some positive things, which is, again, from you of all people, that is a very strange thing.
Not necessarily. I still can talk trash. You're still a hot mess.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about it.
It's like when you go to a gyro, like trucks, like a what do you call those?
The gyro Mediterranean.
Well, it's like you go to food trucks. Thank you.
Yeah.
That meat ain't gonna be good. You're gonna have the bubble guts every time you watch Notre offense. You should get the bubble guts.
Well, here's the thing. Again, it's a weird game to talk about too, because everything goes as perfectly as it can for Notre Dame, and they look exactly as advertised coming into the season. But as you're talking about here, that offense didn't do anything. It didn't impact the game whatsoever. That was a massive defensive performance, and their offense just did barely enough to help them get as big of a win as they did.
Well, I try to tell you and warn you about Oklahoma State. I try to warn you about Oregon State. I try to warn you about Duke. And I tried to warn you about Missouri. Oh, by the way, how about the Missouri Tigers? I told you that Kentucky was fugazi.
I got caught up. I don't know why that Florida game was still in the back of my head, Blake. I don't know why. I thought that maybe they still got that gear in them. Maybe they do. But, Missouri's good enough to be in that 4, 5, 6 range in the SEC just overall. They look pretty good. They look pretty good against Kentucky.
All right, well, we'll recap here today, Oregon and Washington. We'll talk a little Notre Dame, USC, Miami, UNC. Then we'll give our recaps of all of Week 7. Also, we will add into there, should Jimbo be fired? Joe, it's not looking good out there in Junction. Very quickly, you surprised that this has turned so quickly on Jimbo?
Well, no, because I was the one who in the offseason was saying he's not going to make it. I was also the one after the first couple of games and after the Miami game said, this is his fault. This is more telling of Texas A&M than it is of Miami. I've been the one trying to call it out. And there's been a lot of denial. There's been a lot of denial across the board from the national landscape, from Texas A&M fans. But the denial for the Texas A&M fans seemingly is we probably don't have the money to get rid of him. I don't know. I'm not shocked, though. I'm not surprised. I don't know what that timeline is going to be, though. It might be too tough.
I will tell you, everybody continues to talk about the A&M money. Well, you owe him $75 million. So if you really want to win and you want Jimbo out, you're going to have to fork up a crap load of money. And so even if he gets to the season and you want to fire him next year, they owe him $60+ million.
It is another example of why you do not extend a head coach too early into their contract, into their first contract. It happens too many goddamn times. You need enough of a sample size. The problem is that they did it after the 2020 season when they played a condensed schedule. That was the biggest
Yep.
ripoff, that biggest
That team
scam.
was good, though. That team was good. That team was pretty good under Jimbo. You got to give them that. I mean, they were pretty good. I mean,
right. But the problem is that you got duped by. I don't think that they go, they finish the season as strong as they did if they played a full schedule. They just don't.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that at all. All right.
Yeah.
We got a lot to discuss. By the way, I thought Brian Kelly couldn't recruit. Here's my only LSU take of the day.
You're always saying that like I'm saying that. You're always like directing that at me.
I was just under the assumption. That Brian Kelly was the problem in recruiting. Meanwhile, you sit in the same exact spot you had been, and Brian Kelly's about to be in the top 5 again.
It was a huge benefit that they got rid of those photo shoots for recruiting visits.
They didn't get rid of them. LSU ain't getting rid of them.
What do you mean? I thought those were
unofficial visits, not official visits.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Number 1 quarterback in the country, Bryce Underwood, in the house. Just saying.
I've never said that they couldn't recruit. Maybe some other Notre Dame folks have, but I've never been on that side.
Well, just throwing it out there.
Okay.
Let's talk about our good friends over at betonline.ag. Before we do that, everybody do us a favor. Hit the like and share to all those social media groups. Share to all those social media pages. If you're listening to us, watching us on YouTube, like, subscribe, notification bell. Our YouTube channel continues to grow so much. We thank everybody that's on the YouTube channel and watching us from there. Wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. And if you're watching us on FoodBeat TV on the Believe Network channel, I believe is what it is. Yes. Believe Network channel. Thank you so much for being tuned in with us. Let's talk about talk about BetOnline. We got a lot to unpack. Week 7 is complete. Week 8 is on the horizon. We talk about that next. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first to market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. We're back. Hold. You know who is back? Saquon Barkley.
He's going to get like 5 carries. Dude, I don't believe that for a goddamn second. They're going to give him the ball 10 times.
Monumental weekend for you, and you're just shooting it down. Daniel Jones is out. You might actually
don't want to watch the Giants in primetime. I am sick of it. We are an embarrassment, and we keep getting propped up in front of everybody to just get smacked by all these good teams. I'm done with it.
Oh, poor baby.
Yeah, the Saints stink
but
too.
You know what? Thank you. The Saints are complete ass too. Well, defensively, they're really good. It's just offensively, they're complete and utter cheeks. Oregon and Washington teed it up this weekend in the great state of Washington. Look, Joe, the number one thing before we get rolling, before we break this down, hats off to the Seattle natives and Washington State people for showing up and showing out. That stadium was rocking so much. Maybe was the turning tide for them in this game. But, Joe, I've watched this game 3 times. I watched it live. I watched it this morning. I watched it before we got into pre-show production. Dan Lanning screwed the pooch. And I walk away from this more thinking to myself that Oregon blew it against Washington than I say or feel that Washington won the game outright. And let me tell you why. 204 rushing yards for Oregon on the ground. On Monday, you and I talked about the show, the preview of the show, and I said, look, Joe, we've watched the film. We've looked at this. Oregon is going to run all over Washington. They ran for 200 yards. The plays of the game, though, Dan Lanning before halftime, not kicking the field goal, trying to go for it, was a dumb call. You get the ball back at halftime, my man. That is a rookie. And I'm talking about not even a rookie, Joe. Rookie coaches should know that. If you've been around the game long enough, you should know to kick the field goal there. Multiple times, they try to convert on fourth down and could not do it. He made bad, boneheaded decisions. Joe, they lost by 3. There were 2 times that they were in the red zone. If they kicked the field goal, they potentially, I'm not saying they would have, but they would have potentially walked out of Washington a winner. I can't take away, though, Michael Penix and how great of a ball player he is. We talked all off season about how I am a Michael Penix homer. I just don't think as a team they're the best team. I know you want me to put them in my top 4. I'm not going to do that. They will be in the top 5. But the bottom line for me is Oregon blew it, and Dan Lanning blew it. If you can't walk away, I am so convicted on this. I know that their offense is elite. I know that their offense is good. But I look at Oregon and say, Dan, your team got you off the field on a goal line stand. 4 straight plays, Joe. They got him off the field. And he rolled the worst play call he made all night, or that he allowed to be made all night. 4th and 3. They let Bo Nix roll left.
Yeah. Look, I'm not going to disagree that Oregon and Dan Lanning had some really questionable decisions that did put them in a position or removed them from a position to win the football game. I will not disagree with that. But I think that Washington, albeit they did get run on, deserves more credit for the defensive performance that they put up there because, to be fair, it has been painted by some, including you, that it made it seem like Washington's defense was as bad as USC's.
So
I don't think that
they
the
500 yards of offense.
But that's against one of the best offensive teams in the country. That Oregon offense is one of the most well-rounded offenses in the country. I know that they gave up a ton of yards, but they made important stops, got sacks, made plays in important positions when they needed to. On that final drive, they made enough. I know that they got in a position to kick a field goal, but they kept them out of range to the point where it was a deeper field goal that set up for that miss. That range is hard to hit for a college kicker.
What, 40 yards?
You'd be surprised. There are not a lot of kids that can hit that on a game-winning situation.
If you're one of the best teams in the country, I have no
Again, you'd be surprised. For the amount of kickers I've been around, you'd be surprised.
Well, you're the special teams guy. I'm not going to come in here and argue with a guy that played college football for 4 years and played special teams. I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is what I do know, what my big ass does know as a position dude that did play, if you're one of the best teams in the country, you got to have somebody that can make field goals.
Okay.
I mean, right. And here's about now. The only question that you could ask about Dan Lanning's decision-making, if you're missing a 40-yard field goal, maybe he had to go for it. Maybe he did have to go for it. If you're missing straight line, Joe, that was as middle straight line as you could make it, and the dude missed it, okay? But you cannot convince me one iota. Joe, elite offenses, elite ones. Like I see people out there comparing them to the 2019 LSU right now. Remind me of a time that
they're not on that same page. But
okay.
Look,
but Joe, they got stopped 4 straight times in the red zone that would have won them the football game. Hold on, and they got stopped. Dan Lanning decided on 4th and 3 to roll Bo Nix left. Bo Nix went 33 of 44. Joe, you're running the ball with Irving. You had 127 yards with your running game. I know you just got stopped. But the law of averages, you got it. Joe, if Dan Lanning kicks both those field goals, makes better decisions on 4th down, they win the football game.
I'm not disagreeing with that part. I'm not.
I can't deny what you continue to say about Washington. But I walk out of that game saying, If Oregon plays them again, they're going to win.
I am not disagreeing again with the decision making, but the way that I see it, for what they gave up in that game against one of the most well-rounded offenses in the country, that is not a bad defensive performance. They were not going to, we knew for a fact that they were not going to show up and completely blank them and keep them under 300 yards or something crazy like that. They're just not that type of a defense, but they have enough quality off the edge to produce sacks in important spots. I also really believe one of my biggest takeaways from this Washington game and this performance, I know that they sputtered a little bit in that second half and then they regained the momentum. I think that this Washington team is the most dangerous team on third down and in the red zone for the way that they can convert with any of those receivers. I every time that it was a third and long or third and medium, I had so much confidence that Michael Penix was going to find Polk or he was going to find Odunze in a jump ball situation or over the top to pick up that first down or to score in the red zone. They are just so freaking good. And I know that percentage-wise, number-wise, they're up there in the top third in both those categories. But if you actually, when we watch them and we put context behind it, they have so much talent to dominate in those situations. And I think that is whenever they're in a close football game and an opposing coach is making stupid decisions, they can capitalize it and they can win those football games.
Well, I will agree that I think we did see something. The game plan is obvious. Joe, on I think it was Monday of this past week, the number one takeaway that I had was that Oregon's going to go in this game and try to play a little keep away, and they did. They had the ball for 35 minutes of a time of possession. I thought they did the right – I think for as much as I just trashed on Dan Lanning, I thought that they had the right game plan to slow Washington down. I will tell you, I'm coming back for my take that was right. Jordan Burch had an amazing game for Oregon. And if there is one place when you can't deny it now. I know everybody trashed on me from Washington. You know, you clipped the video, the Washington people are in the comments. Blake has no idea what he's talking about what happened at tackle. Let me tell you something, bro. Let me tell you something, brother. They got an issue at tackle. If there's one glaring weakness, Joe, Jordan Burch went off. This team went off. When they're at the goal line and both tackles are getting destroyed and you're trying to get the ball to the outside, it is a massive problem. I'm going to continue to hit on that point because if there's one thing I know, it's guard and tackle play. And my goodness gracious, great balls of fire. They're dookie there. Last one thing I want to point out. Michael Penix is now the front runner of the Heisman, and I don't.
Yes.
As much as I love Jayden Daniels and think that he's closer than some people believe that he is, I do think right now Penix leads that ticket. Do you agree?
I think that, and then also to throw in there, I know that you're not going to move Washington up that far. I think that this, without a doubt, is the best win of the season for any team in the country. This is, without a doubt, the best victory. Maybe not as defiant as that Florida State win over LSU because of how much they won by. But I think knowing what that Oregon team is going to do the rest of the year, they're probably going to go unscathed the rest of the season. If that happens, that win at the end of the season is going to really be really good on Washington's resume. But I completely agree with you. The thing that's a little weird, though, this wasn't even Michael Penix's best game. You know, he was a little shaky. I believe he threw a pick, right?
Yeah, he threw a pick that was really bad. I will give him this. Okay, the Odunze fell down. Okay, like
right, that's not on him. But
it was still a really, really bad throw in a critical moment. Here's the truth. Okay, just stay with me. And I hate playing the what if game. I hate it. However, that interception, if Dan Lanning would call a right game, should have been the last play of the game that potentially that we saw of Michael Penix and the win. So but he vindicated himself. He goes down to 2 plays and scores. I mean, so he vindicates himself. However, if that game was better managed, we could be having a completely different discussion about Michael Penix. Offensively, they are as good as it comes, man. They're as good as it comes. You can't deny them. Look, I have to put them in my top 5 now. I know that this was a discuss. I just did not. Here's one thing complimentary I will completely say about Washington. I was dead ass wrong on. They are a physical team. They came out on special teams and was lighting dudes up. I'm like, God damn.
They don't mess around.
They did not. And I questioned their toughness. And look, they play balls to the wall. They're a very confident bunch. I don't want to say cocky. That the defense, even though they're giving up 500 yards, they're confident. They're going to let you know when they make a play. But this team is, I think could be playoff bound. The only thing is I think it's extremely difficult to beat a good team twice. With that being said, I do still believe that if Oregon and them played again, Oregon would win that football game on a neutral site.
I don't disagree with that. And I think, as we've always talked about, it's hard to beat a good team twice. That feeds into like my real main takeaway from this.
Okay.
I think that game is an indicator to us that there is a strong possibility, maybe even just a pretty much a likelihood that we don't get a Pac-12 team in the playoff. I really think that is an indicator, and the way that Oregon State played against UCLA and the way that Arizona whooped up on Washington State, the Pac-12 is such a good conference this year, which is hilarious to say, that everybody's going to pick one another off. I actually think, and as much as I'm a Washington supporter this season, I think that there's a possibility that they lose a game later down the line. And I think that cannibalization of themselves.
Brutal next 5 weeks.
And so does Oregon. And so does USC. All of these teams have really difficult. There's not a single team in the Pac-12 that has an easy final stretch that I can think of that's going to be in that conversation. They're all going to pick each other off. And I think if there's a one-loss Pac-12 team that wins the conference, that they can sneak in and be the last one in. But I just don't think that's going to happen. I think that there's too many good football teams that they're all going to beat up on each other.
Does Washington play Oregon State?
I want to say that they do.
Washington Huskies schedule. I want to look at something because I'm going to tell you something you won't agree with. Let's see, they have
Probably
USC.
Not. Oregon State, November 18th.
November 18th. Oregon State's style of play does make that game very interesting to me because I think that they are better at running the football and playing keep away. We saw that defense is soft enough in that front seven. If Oregon State gets that running game going, it could be a long, long night for Washington and Penix not get a lot of chances. I do think that game's highly interesting as well. Joe, my final thought on this is simply I think Washington's a good football team. I don't think that you can deny them anymore. Penix, if I had a vote today, I think would win the Heisman. I don't have a vote. I wouldn't vote for him as number one because I'd be completely biased because of what I see on a daily basis. But I would say he is one of the best in the country, and I'll give him that. I love watching him play football. I love watching a lefty throw the ball all over the place. It's been really fun to watch, so we'll see. Joe, this time next week or last week, I came out here and said Notre Dame versus USC in South Bend, and my man Joe, you were broken up. It was like a girl in high school that dumped you. You were broken. You were so broken that Notre Dame betrayed. Like your girl in high school had been cheating on you. And Uncle Blake came over and said, listen, little Joe, don't worry about it because Notre Dame, my goodness, put the smack down on USC. Joe, this game and the box score is not going to look good for either team, really. Notre Dame's offense didn't look completely great. 5 USC turnovers. That defense showed up and showed out in South Bend on Saturday.
Well, the big reason, just to really simply put it, the way that Notre Dame won this football game is doing something that no other team has been able to do in Caleb Williams' career, which is force him to make stupid turnovers. Nobody has turned him over that much. He has been such a problem as an improvisational quarterback. Notre Dame found a way to keep him in the pocket, contain the pocket, got a couple of sacks. But the big thing here, and what's been very apparent, he's just a bigger version of Kyler Murray. You know, it's like that's what the realization is here. Because the way that Kyler Murray played, come on, the way that Kyler Murray played, and we've seen it in some of his worst games in the NFL, he bounces around a ton. He tries to throw on the run, and then he just makes some crazy ass throw when things aren't opening up, and that leads to interceptions and into mistakes. Maybe that's a little bit of a reach of a comp, but dude, Caleb Williams, that backyard football type of stuff does not work against good defenses. It didn't work against Utah last year. It didn't work against Notre Dame this past weekend. That stuff is going to catch up to him at some point. It absolutely will. And it did last night.
I'm not willing to go that far yet. I do think that teams and especially quarterbacks, because you got to be perfect for so long and so much. Joe, I got to be real with you. He was due one of these. We've seen quarterbacks around the country, Drake May and Penix Jr. We've seen, Joe, every quarterback that is going to come out of this class, we've seen have a performance like that. And the one that we had not seen, a guy that we had not seen have a performance where they look that bad, quite honestly, has been Caleb Williams. He has had to be their rock. And when everything else around him would break down, he would make ridiculous plays. I agree with you. Times and teams that he's faced, I'd say the two toughest defenses that he's played in the last 2 years has been Utah and was obviously Notre Dame, and he lost both of those games. He's lost all three of those games. I don't think Notre Dame defensively was that good last year. I'm just going to be real.
No, they weren't.
Okay.
To clarify, I'm not saying, though, that Caleb Williams is still going to be the first overall pick. He's still going to be an incredible football player. I also think that Kyler Murray has a recoverability to him that he could still end up having a great career. But my point is here, and the main takeaway from this is that because of the way that he plays the game and the way that Notre Dame attacked him, as you're saying, he is the guy when everything breaks down, finds ways to overcome it. But they found a way that when everything broke down, for him to have a meltdown. Like he took himself out, and he didn't literally take himself out of the game, but mentally, you saw in that second half, the guy was done. He peaced.
So, I don't think this second half. I think after that third pick, he was out of there mentally. And look, I told you this. Him going up to a cold, wasn't it a little rainy? Wasn't it a little drizzly in South Bend?
It was supposed to rain, but it didn't look like it really rained much.
Cold, windy,
40 degrees.
And Indiana. I didn't like it for him. I really didn't. They got after him all night. That O-line for you. There's two things, and look, two things can be true at once. I kind of feel like I know what I'm getting from Notre Dame at this point. I did not at the moment, and it wasn't confirmed until, quite frankly, until they played Notre Dame. I didn't really know what I was getting in USC. Had no clue. Didn't know. Knew their defense wasn't that good, but didn't really know. USC lost, and really and truthfully, it wasn't because of their defense. It was because their offense stunk. And I do think that every team, national championship team, there's going to be a game where your offense is off. And I said this in the preseason. I'm sure I know that you'll remember this because we talked about it ad nauseum. I think Lincoln Riley's the biggest fugazi of a coach. Everybody talks about him in the top 10. Remember, we talked about our top 10 coaches, top 5 coaches. And I was like, look, everybody comes on here and says Lincoln Riley's one of the best. Says whom? Because here's another game on the road against a ranked opponent that he cannot win a football game. So USC might be 9-3, bud. They might be a 9-3 football team, because if they do have to play some of these other teams, like they play Washington, they're going to lose. I really think that they're going to get beat by Washington.
I really do think so too. And when they get to the Big Ten, it's going to be a rude awakening for stinking Riley because it's the same. You're going to see that every single week. Physical teams up front that are going to play really gap sound football, that their offense maybe not that exciting. You know, when you get to play a revamped Michigan State or an Iowa, and I know that those offenses probably won't be very good, but if you can't overcome a good defense at all, and you make those mistakes and you turn the ball over, it is going to be an uphill battle for them in the Big Ten. But you hit on something that's really important here. I am not taking this away from Notre Dame. As a Notre Dame fan, I am extremely excited by the fact that they won. But I think, I was screaming in my hotel room with Sean while he was trying to sleep last night, and he was pissed at me. I think that this game is a lot more telling of USC than it is for Notre Dame. My thoughts on Notre Dame have not changed. They have an elite defense. Their offense is still extremely weak. They got a lot of short fields. They even had multiple positions for their defense set them up for points and put points on the board. That to me is just so much proof that USC does not belong anywhere near the conversation as a top team in the Pac-12 or in the country. They are extremely overrated, as you just talked about. Lincoln Riley's overrated. The team is overrated. You cannot succeed in football when one of your sides fails, both sides fail. You have to be able to lift yourself up on both sides of the football when one end is having a bad day.
Now, this is interesting because Notre Dame has Pitt, Clemson, which I think is a tough game on the road. Wake Forest, you win.
That Clemson game is going to be. I don't know if they beat Clemson on the road.
I don't know if they beat
because they don't. They clearly don't travel well. They don't.
Well, and look, Pitt beat Louisville yesterday, and so I look.
I'll be at that game, by the way.
What's that?
I'll be at that game, by the way.
Oh, I got you. Yeah. I know what I'm getting from Notre Dame. It's the same exact thing I got from them a year ago, Joe. There's nothing new. There's literally nothing new that
they're a little bit better offensively.
No, I really don't think they are. I really don't. Can I tell you why? I'm glad you brought. Estimate 22 carries, 95 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's not running. Last 2 games, he doesn't have 5 yards a carry. This offensive line that I was told was one of the best in the country. Last year, I knew what you were doing offensively, and people had to slow you down from running the football. Joe, I got to be honest. I don't know if you do anything well offensively. You got the good little – I thought that the play calling was a lot better. I really did.
Well, it's easier to call plays when you're beating the shit out of another team's offense and you're up big.
True, and I'm with you. The little pick play in the end zone with the running back comes out of the backfield, that was beautiful. Beautiful play call. Joe, they want to line up and kill everybody, and they couldn't. Joe, I'm going to be real with you. I know that Esme ran for 4-something yards a carry. He should have been at 7, 8, 9 yards a carry against this defense. That is concerning to me. It's concerning.
The reason why I think that they're better slightly is that there is a little bit better receiver talent. I'm not saying it's drastically better. We all heard what I said last week. We all heard me criticize this Notre Dame team. They, at least if they're in a close football game, as we saw against Duke, Sam Hartman is good enough, much better than Drew Pine. Drew Pine couldn't orchestrate a drive for his goddamn life when they needed to. They absolutely
True,
not.
But you know what you could do?
What?
Run on anybody. And you can't.
Yeah, we were running the ball better last year. You are right.
I mean, you can't run the ball right now. And I just think if Joe, you know what I'm doing? You know what I'm doing everything in my power. Look, man, if I take Sam Hartman's ability to throw the ball and play tight coverage, it's exactly what Louisville did. We're going to play tight man-on-man coverage, and Duke did it. Duke just didn't have the success of winning. If you can get after Sam Hartman, the running game is not good enough right now. I think Notre Dame has another loss along the way. Maybe it's Clemson. I don't know. But I do walk away continually here saying to myself, this teaches me so much more about USC because Notre Dame was flying all over the place. They look bigger. They look faster. They look stronger. And they look like they wanted it more. USC got popped, as Mike Tyson once said, and I probably shouldn't say this, but everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And
that is true.
And USC got punched in the mouth, and they had no idea how to respond.
By the way, let's settle down the Notre Dame is Iowa. Iowa.
How about the Hawkeyes? Everybody trashing them. Wisconsin.
They stink. They stink. They
keep winning.
It pisses me off. Iowa might actually go 11-1. We need Rutgers to be our savior. I tweeted that earlier.
By the way,
What?
to rudely interrupt you.
No,
Did
go
you
ahead.
see the kid from Rutgers that got ejected?
No, I didn't see that. What happened?
Okay. Big fourth down play, linebacker blitzes. They call a targeting on him. You're just going to have to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, can you go look it up there? This Rutgers ejection. Can you just look at this for me very quickly so we can talk about this? Because I don't know the kid's name. I just saw it on Twitter. It's got to be the worst call I've ever seen. And how about the fighting Tony Sopranos coming all the way back for the win? New Jersey in the house.
Nothing's coming up.
Okay.
I'll find it after the show. That still sucks.
It was such BS. Let the dudes play, man. But the fighting Tony Sopranos.
Hell yeah. I think that they can beat Iowa. I really do.
Joe, James Madison could beat Iowa.
Hey, man. I am kind of rooting for the chaotic nature. No. Well, I am rooting for. Actually, no, I am not rooting for JMU. What are we talking about here? I hate JMU. I told that story on the show. They freaking beat us 80 points my freshman year. I am rooting for the chaos of if Iowa runs the table and goes 11-1. I think that would be the perfect, just absolute F up for our expectations for imagine if they go all the way to the Big Ten championship game and they somehow get Michigan to stoop down to their level and they just ruin everything. That would be so perfectly chaotic. I root for terrible things, but.
So listen, I'm just going to throw this out there.
Yeah.
If Iowa plays Michigan and wins and they're 11-1, Joe, they're a legit team if they make the playoff, bud.
No, they're not. No. If Iowa beats Michigan, it's because they got them to stoop down to their level, and JJ McCarthy has a meltdown.
Iowa's going to get killed by Michigan.
Yeah, probably.
I mean,
that's my point.
They're going to get killed by Ohio State.
They don't play Ohio State.
But if they did play Ohio State, I'm just saying it doesn't matter. If they play Penn State,
their remaining stretch, before we switch over here, Minnesota, Northwestern, Rutgers, Illinois, and Nebraska. There's not a single losable game there.
No, there's not, but there's also not a winnable one. Not the way that their offense plays. Okay. If Ohio State gets there, Penn State gets there, doesn't matter. They're going to win. By the way, Penn State, Ohio State this week, that's going to be a fun matchup to talk about. All right. I'm finally out on Cristobal. I'm finally out on Cristobal. I can't keep doing it. Look, Drake May is a guy that I think we got to give some consideration to. We got to say this. We were talking about this in the pre-show. I did not realize how soft North Carolina's schedule was.
Oh, it's very favorable.
It's very favorable. In saying that, they could find themselves in the ACC championship game.
They really benefited from their scheduling rotation.
Yep.
That they don't have to play Florida State. I don't think that they play Clemson. No, wait, we were talking about this earlier. They do play Clemson. But still, not having to play Florida State is huge for them.
Watch Clemson claw their way back in there.
That's going to piss me off.
Well,
that also ruins things for the outlook of the rest of the season, because then there's probably not an ACC team that goes to the playoff if they climb their way back and they go to the ACC championship game. But you're talking about here with UNC, though.
Yep. UNC, Miami.
Yeah.
Joe, I just don't get it. Like, I don't. Now, there's so much I want to say about Cristobal, but at the same time, I feel like you got to let him build a little bit, because I think Miami was in a really bad spot. But I will admit, I did not account for Tez Walker to be this good this quickly. Being off the last 6 weeks, I just didn't think he'd come back looking like that. And Tez Walker, 3-touchdown game, looked fantastic. That offense is really good. I poo-pooed on Gene Chizik, and I got egg on my face. I got to walk that back. I thought Gene Chizik had a really bad call defense a year ago. He did. Didn't think they'd turn it around. They did. They are not a bad team. I just don't think they're a playoff team yet, but a good win against Miami. Drake May continues to impress.
I could kind of see them being that TCU this year that just runs the table. It looks good enough, and then maybe doesn't really show up for the playoff. But to talk about, I don't know how much more credit I really give that to Gene Chizik than us just being reminded of what I tried to explain to everybody going into the week. That Tyler Van Dyke's a liability. Look, I'm just going to keep this really simple. I'm not going to take the victory lap.
They've been doing this to everybody, though. I mean, at some point, you got to say they're
True.
better defensively. That's
are
better defensively than they were a year ago.
They absolutely are. I think that defensive unit really proved a lot to us. I'm done talking about Tyler Van Dyke, though, dude. I'm so annoyed with myself that I let the Miami fans get in my head after he had that singular good game. The guy is not good. The interceptions that he threw were so unbelievably stupid. I don't understand why a fan base is so supportive of a guy who is so mediocre. It is unbelievable how bad he is. He's not a good quarterback. But again, I'm done talking about him. We're moving past it because I want to talk about what this means for North Carolina. Because as you said, Mario Cristobal, this is only year 2. He has done a great job of recruiting. He is an amazing recruiter.
And will continue to recruit.
There is a lot of time for this thing to get figured out. I think that there's a lot of positive signs for Miami. I think eventually they're going to be a really good team. They're building up some really, really nice depth. On the case for UNC, though, you hit the nail on the head on my main takeaway. Tez Walker was the missing piece because they looked really strong offensively. Bryson Nesbitt, some of these receivers were making some big plays. A couple guys were going off. It was never the same guy. But I think that Tez Walker really welcomed himself to ACC football play, and he is going to continue to ascend and be a dominant player in this conference the rest of the way. Not a lot of guys can cover him. He's got a size advantage. He's a great athlete. He will go up and rip the ball out of the air in the red zone.
And look,
that is what they needed.
Still there. McCullum was going off before then too. They got two very legit receivers, man.
And they have probably the most accurate and consistent quarterback throwing them the football. And a guy that ball just shoots off of Drake May's hand. He is taking a step forward.
I don't know how he look. I know this is gonna be a hot take. I know that there's some scouts out there that take him over Caleb Williams.
I've heard that. Admittedly, I have heard that. I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think
teams that are probably thinking that are probably not going to be in that position to draft first overall.
Why do I feel like, and North Carolina fans are going to kill me for this, and that's okay. Why do I feel like North Carolina's just not that great? Like, why do I not get that feel of a Washington? Why do I not get that feel of why do I just feel like, man, you're going to slip up and lose one? Why do I have that pit in my stomach that, like, man, I just don't know if you're a complete team?
Well, this is a comment that's going to piss some people off, I'm sure. It's because they're an ACC team. I don't mean to be negative, and my team's technically an ACC team, but it's just for whatever reason, ACC teams just don't always finish seasons. There's always a bump in the road that derails a good ACC team.
They have a favorable schedule, though.
They do, and I'm very wary that they slip up against somebody. I don't know why. I have that same feeling.
So you have that same feeling?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Their defense looked really good, but the way that they let Miami kind of come back into it, I think that their secondary might be weaker than we think it is. But maybe I'm making a wrong assumption there. I'm not totally sold on that take, but maybe they face somebody who can air the ball out and has nothing to lose. Like, I want to look at the rest of the schedule really quick, but it's really possible. Maybe it's because it's Mac Brown. Maybe I'm just hating on Mac Brown. Maybe that team that does do it to him, maybe it's Georgia Tech like last year. I don't think Duke could do it. It could be Clemson.
Maybe. Look, I don't want to take away from the winning team. They're undefeated. They're going to be a top 10 team. They deserve to be a top 10 team. They're more than halfway into the season undefeated. They're one of the only undefeated teams left. I just don't know how far. Like, Joe, I still think that there's one, maybe even some 2 lost teams that I think are better than them. It is of my opinion that your record does not always say how good you are or bad you are as a team. I mean, we went through halfway through the year and USC was undefeated. And so I just look at them and ask myself the question, how good are you? Because Miami is why they're, why they are a good team, or while they are a good team, I should say. Van Dyke made some bad throws, like throwing right to the linebacker. But at the same time, that D line from North Carolina is not bad at all. They're
good.
They're good. So I just feel like if they were in or had another team schedule, that they might be a 9-3 team, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. One thing I will admit, nobody in Miami was not prepared for Tez Walker. They just weren't.
No.
They did not have an answer. Even when they bracket covered him, even when they doubled him, he still was getting wide ass open. Maybe he should get the chain that Jamar Chase has that calls himself 7-Eleven, because he was always open.
And it seems like a really simple take, but one of my go-to takes that I have, and I'm going to continue to say on this show, if you have a quarterback who can stretch the field vertically, has a big arm that the ball gets out quick and it gets there in an instant, and you've got receivers who can stretch the field vertically and you can consistently make that connection, you're going to be a very tough offense to stop. It happens with Washington. It happened for Texas when they beat Alabama. It is one of the most difficult things to stop because there's not enough corners in the country that can, and safeties and defensive backs that can keep up with those types of plays. It's not the NFL. It's just rare to find.
Which, by the way, can I tell you something stupid I did?
Oh, no. What'd you do?
I took the Browns today.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Money line?
Yeah, money line.
Yeah. This is one take that hasn't been brought up on this show. Brock Purdy's not good. I've said it a million times.
We got to talk about the rest of our Week 7 recap at Jimbo Fisher. I'm not listening to you. I'm not listening to you. I'm not going.
I mean, the stat line's on the TV right now.
I'm not going there. I can't. I refuse for you to bash Brock Purdy.
He played like crap. I mean, if he plays
it's not Brock Purdy's fault that he was drafted the last overall pick and people around him are making massive assumptions. It's not on him.
All right, we're not gonna do it. I'm not gonna let us get dragged down.
Yeah, you always blame me. Blake drags the show down, and then you bring up asinine ass comments. I did bet against him today. I don't like. So there's 3 rules that I live by. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
I hate when West Coast teams, go into the Midwest midway through the year and temperatures start changing. Notre Dame, college-wise, and then Notre Dame kind of had the double win on this one, maybe even a trifecta. I hate it as a team that I want to pick it for, a team that just lost embarrassingly, going back home. I will always favor the home team on that one. Third and not least, and you hit the nail on the head just a minute ago, I always pick the better head coach and quarterback. Why I took Tennessee yesterday, okay? I think we both talked about this week. I've massively betted on Tennessee this week. Joe, I put $100 on them because I thought it was just money line. I was like, Jimbo ain't winning. He's not winning. And I think that's a good segue for us to get to our next segment. Let's talk about our good friends over at Home Field Apparel. Home Field Apparel, use the promo code Ruffino and Joe. Don't go anywhere. We recap the rest of Week 7 next.
Ruffino and Joe Show is brought to you by Home Field Apparel, which is the best, without a doubt, premium collegiate apparel brand that is out there. They have over 150 different colleges that you can choose from, whether you're an Illinois fan or a Rutgers fan, maybe you're an LSU fan like Blake, or maybe you're an Alabama fan. Whatever it is, even Idaho, they have so many different designs for so many different football programs that I can guarantee you're going to find some great stuff to help root for your favorite team. I've already gotten my Notre Dame stuff. Blake has his LSU stuff. Make sure you head on over to homefieldapparel.com to check out your team's collection of clothing apparel that they have on the website. And when you do so, when you check out, make sure you use promo code Ruffino Joe to get 15% off your order. That is RUFFINO, Ruffino Joe. Head on over to homefieldapparel.com and get your college gear today.
By the way, we have a service academy 7 weeks into the year that is still undefeated.
They cost me money. I bet on Wyoming. I took Wyoming money line.
Oh. Every time I see the Air Force play, I want to stand in the Pledge of Allegiance.
If by the way, before we do flip the page here, imagine if we had the 12-team playoff and one of those teams was Air Force.
Air Force would be in it.
That is so chaotically perfect. I love that. I love the thought of that.
Here's the problem with this format. You ready? Could you imagine just throwing this out there? Because you said earlier that you don't know if there's going to be a Pac-12 team that gets in the playoff.
Yeah.
Let's just say hypothetically the Pac-12 one-loss champion is Washington. Okay?
Okay.
Could you imagine James Madison or Air Force trying to slow down Michael Penix Jr.? Everybody's so big on this playoff expansion. What about the James Madison Bulldogs? Aren't they the Bulldogs?
The Dukes.
The Dukes. Could you imagine the Dukes having to stop Michael Penix Jr.?
Hey, man, that team is good. That JMU team is good. Wagon.
Shut your
wagon.
All right. Besides the service academies, anybody else stand out to you this week that we did not talk about?
I think that the biggest one is just a minor thought on Oregon State. I think that kind of fed into my thoughts on real Pac-12 take here. Arizona is a lot better than everyone wants to give them credit for.
I agree.
Arizona's a good team. It's okay. Wait. They're not elite. They're not a rankable team, but they're one of those teams that you don't want to have to face if you're a good football program and you're coming off of a big win.
No business beating.
Yeah,
they go into overtime with USC. They almost take down Washington with the backup quarterback. Arizona.
Dude, I was trying to say this on the show, and all these Oregon fans were so pissy during the week. Oh, everyone brings up the Texas Tech game. What about the Arizona one for Washington? Arizona beats Texas Tech if they play each other. And if they play each other at the beginning of the year.
I don't disagree with that. I think for me, Joe, it's really two teams. Okay. One good, one not so good.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we got to talk about our good friends over in the state of Missouri. They go into Lexington. They get it. Luther Burden does not have a good day whatsoever. It doesn't matter. Brady Cook is doing the cooking signal. He's scrambling. He gets the win. I told you all season they might be the second best team in the East. They're going to play for it. They're sure as hell going to play for the second best team in the East. Let's see. Not so good. Joe, how do you beat Notre Dame and then lose to Pittsburgh 38-21 if you're Louisville?
Did you watch the highlights of that game? I tweeted about this.
I did. I sure did.
It kind of ruins the USC win for me. It really kind of does, like, a little bit. I'm not trying to let it, but it kind of does. Because that Louisville team's not good. They're really not.
I just think Narduzzi always has one upset of the year, and that's how he continues to maintain his job. He's going to beat one team he has no business beating every year.
Former roadie Ram, Pat Narduzzi.
Also the snitch known as Pat Narduzzi. One last thing before we get to Jimbo here.
Yeah.
I know that you were right on, and I will give you your props on Tyler Van Dyke. Whomst ever.
I swear to God.
You were so wrong on Graham Mertz.
He's not consistent.
30 of 48, 423 yards and 3 touchdowns.
It's a good game, but pull up his Kentucky stat line. Like, he's not.
That's not all.
He's very down the middle. I'll go as
No,
far to say
I
that
just
he's
want to
not
throw
good.
this out there. Dude, I was one of them.
Wait.
I thought they were going 5-2, and Graham Mertz.
Can I bring this up, by the way?
Sure, you
I
can.
was admonished by the Miami community, who, by the way, very, very quiet after some of the comments that I made at the beginning
By the
of the
way,
season.
did you hear the spaces where they played the Mario? Dun, 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 dun,
Yes.
dun,
I
dun,
heard
dun, dun.
that. I laughed my ass off of that.
I did
But
too.
I was attacked for saying that if Miami had Graham Mertz, they'd be a better football team. And they like all came at my head. Wouldn't you agree with me right now that if Graham Mertz was starting,
is better than Tyler Van Dyke? I'm sorry.
That shouldn't be a hot take. I bet you that no Miami fan will concede that.
Look, I don't know if Florida gets another 2 wins. I don't think that they can. I still think that they got LSU, they have Florida State, they have Georgia. I think they lose all 3 of those games. Still 5-2. Still 5-2.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, they look strong. And I did, when we did our preview of Florida, they're good enough to finish in the middle of the pack and to beat all the bad teams. But any good team with a little bit of juice, like Kentucky, they're going to get punched in the mouth. They're just not there yet.
Yeah, I think that that easily could happen. One final thing for me. The wildest finish I think I've ever seen in college football, one of the wildest, I should say, one of the wildest. Houston, West Virginia.
That ruined my night on Thursday.
Yeah, mine too, because I took West Virginia.
Yeah.
Let's get to Jimbo. So, Joe, I don't know how much you want to break this game down. I mean, we can, and we probably should, Tennessee and Texas A&M. But A&M has lost their last 2 games. And I know that it's tough. Connor Wegman is not there. I don't know if it would have made a difference. But they're not A&M, as much as they have athletes all around the place, they're still losing here, Joe. And Jimbo's got to be on the hot seat. And I don't know what you do if you're A&M at this point. I really don't. And I do think, look, I have been waiting to see on Jimbo. I've been waiting to see on Jimbo. I've never on this show come out and said that they should fire him. I've never said that. And I've given him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
However, I'm not doing it anymore. They got to let him go. They got to let Jimbo go.
It's too far gone.
Too far gone. He will never have more athletes than he does right now.
I have a weird take, and it kind of flip-flop in here. So what's the biggest barrier, obviously, is the buyout, right? Like it's trying to get him out of the contract, having to pay all that money, and there's a debate on.
I don't think it's just the buyout. It's his buyout, and then it's having to buy some other coach out that's worth a shit to come to A&M. You're
a lot of money.
At $100 million just in buyout money.
So here's my take. I really think that because of that, is it really such a bad thing to keep him on for one more year and let him recruit with his back up against the wall?
Do that to me. You can't flip takes.
Wait. I'm not flipping takes. So I'm not saying keep him to give him one more shot. I'm saying this is a really kind of tinfoil hat, half-baked thought. But is it really a bad thing to let him recruit one more year, even if he somehow turns it around next year, which he won't? Let him recruit, bring in one more really good recruiting class. You fire him. The buyout's not as expensive. You bring in a capable coach with a really good roster, and then you hit the ground running. Is that a crazy take? Is that an insane thing?
I think it's a crazy take because of this. What boosters going to want to spend that much money on recruits when they're going to have to spend that much money to buy him out next year, which is $60 million?
That's a good point, actually.
And let me tell you something, because this is to the LSU fans. So listen to me. I know what's about to happen. What's about to happen is that from an LSU perspective, what I'm about to say is going to get clipped and shared in LSU stuff. I already know what's about to happen. So let me just preface this by saying there may be a chance that A&M starts losing some recruits.
It's probable.
And LSU people are going to know what I'm talking about. bottom line is this. I don't know how much those boosters are going to want to pay if they're going to have to pay him out. If I'm a booster at A&M, I'm not paying them jack shit in recruiting.
Right, to set him up for
failure. So because the best thing for their program is to get him out of there. Joe, he's worse at this point than Kevin Sumlin ever was, and they ran Sumlin out. I know the money is a big deal, but that D-line, who is fantastic, Joe, Tennessee ran for 232 yards on them. The right kid had 135, 136 yards, 7 yards a carry. Joe Milton had 34 yards. They ran it down the throat. Joe Milton went 11. Everybody, remember when everybody and their mama said Joe Milton might be the best quarterback in the country during the preseason? Well, that guy went for 12 for 100 yards and looked like dog crap. They needed a punt return for a touchdown to win it. A&M's just not a good football team. And Jimbo has been given more money in recruiting than anybody in the country, if not close to it. And he can't put together. And the bad thing about this is I feel like the Aggie fans, some of them, are going to give Jimbo an out because they're going to say Weigman got hurt. Weigman doesn't stop 232 rushing yards on you. You had, even if you would have split the last 2 weeks, if you would have beat Bama and then lost to Tennessee, I'd be like, you know what? Okay, look, they still have a chance to be 9-3. I think at the end of all of this, they may be looking up and scrapping for themselves to be bowl eligible.
They are at that point, the dead carcass point where there's no pulse. They don't.
The crows are circling is what you're trying to say. The crows are circling.
They look underprepared and lacking energy, and that is always an indicator of bad coaching.
Well, but here's another thing. Not only is it bad coaching on some of this, people are questioning Petrino. You got sophomores and freshmen that have never played. Like, some of these dudes have never played, Joe. I mean, Tennessee, you want to know what Tennessee's defensive game plan was? We're going to sit a heat. Not at Max Johnson. They were doing things to confuse that offensive line. They got Basantis, who's a freshman. He's a right tackle. He should be playing at guard. He has no business being out there. And they blitzed all night. They came after him all night. And it didn't change a goddamn thing, one iota, because A&M's not well prepared, like you mentioned. If money was not an object, which it is an object, because we're not stroking that $75 million check here, he's got to go. And you know what? As much as I hate A&M more than I hate Bama as an LSU dude. I hate A&M. I think they're a cum stain on this conference. Okay? They are a cum stain on this conference. They do those weird ass chants. Okay, they do that weird ass shit. It's weird. I know it's for them and they love it, but it's weird. And bottom line is, if we're just going to take the bias out of it, Jimbo's got to go. You never trust a man that wears a Velcro hat unless it's a visor.
I said this at the beginning of the show. Stop extending coaches. Stop extending coaches before they've done anything. One good season does not constitute an extension for a head coach. Stop doing it.
Here's the only reason that you extend coaches. You ready?
His contract's up. That's the only reason why you should.
Well, if they're building, you got to extend them to somewhat because of recruiting. You got to have a 4-year contract. Okay? People don't like you not having 4-year contracts. But if you have a coach that's constantly having 10 wins, you got to continue to extend him because there's still a potential that he can break through. But man, Jimbo, A&M, and the way that they do things, they're a cum stain.
Yeah, I mean, the lack of direction, their approach to solving every problem has just been to throw money at it. And that doesn't always just work, because you went and you brought in a coach that had done some good things. And yes, you attracted him to come from Florida State, which was a good move. But him not succeeding for most of his early parts of his contract with a mediocre year during the COVID season, all that stuff happening. To extend him then was a mistake. You threw way too much money at him to keep him around. And then you've thrown money at recruits that does not always work in the NIL era. Just because you have the best players does not always translate to the best rosters, because sometimes ignoring character concerns, which is kind of been apparent with the grouping of guys that they've brought in over the past couple of years, that is going to kill your program, because a bunch of those guys have left and gone to other places, and a bunch of them aren't even on the rosters that they originally were on. Those 5-star guys left. Who was the one kid who went to Georgia? Or is it Georgia? There was a kid from Ole Miss who
Chris Marshall left. He's not there. Denver Harris left, went to LSU.
That's a problem. That is an indictment on good recruiting. There is clearly a lack of control going on.
Because here's the truth: Saban's
can't evaluate character for developing a good program.
That's where I was going. The character issues, and I'm not for LSU people. I'm not saying Denver Harris has character issues. All I'm saying is the kids that left there were some character issues. But Joe, I just feel like that they have so much damn talent on that team to be losing the way that they had no business losing to Tennessee. None.
Or the way that they
did.
Miller
11 for 22 for 100 yards. I mean, they had no business losing.
Horrible performance.
Horrible performance by Tennessee through the air. But here's another. They ran all over that defensive line, though. And I'm going to tell you, Tennessee, it's complete opposite of what they did a year ago. They will run all over your ass if you're not paying attention.
They're
hitting stride now.
Yeah, they were dicking around a little too much trying to throw the ball as much as they were. And I think that there's a realization of we've got two great backs.
I saw a stat. Let me make sure that this is correct. Let me try to find it. So because they ran the ball 49 times yesterday, somebody had a stat where they ran the ball 14 straight times in the second half.
Just do that. Just do that every single game.
All right. Well, I think that, I want Jimbo to stay another year because I think that helps out Brian Kelly to some extent for my team. But if we're just taking all bias out, like if I'm taking all the biases out whatsoever, you got to fire the dude. He's not good enough. He's never been good enough. So we'll see. All right.
Full plug.
Got to. See you guys again tomorrow. We'll break down start of week 8.
Hell yeah.
Joe, it's going to be fun. Till then, we'll see y'all soon. Y'all have a good night. Peace.